Hey guys, and welcome to my channel. My name is Danielle, and this is Failing at Fashion, where I help keep you from failing at your fashion business. So, I heard you want to be a designer. Great! Oh my God, I sound like I'm talking to a 2-year-old. No, but for real, that is a wonderful choice. I'm so glad that you're about to become part of this wonderful, crazy fashion world. But you want to be a fashion designer. What does that really look like, feel like when you're going through your career? So today, that is what we're going to talk about. 4 different approaches to how you can go into your fashion career. So I'm sorry ahead of time, but I talk with my hands. So it's going to be a lot of this, but I apologize if you don't like that. It's just get used to it. So let's jump right into this. So there's lots of different ways to get into the fashion industry and to become a fashion designer as a title. But I'm going to try to simplify it and break it down into 4 different categories. So those categories are corporate, freelance, coordinator, and maker. As a fashion designer in a corporate setting, you will be part of a team you'll most likely be working with other designers, different departments like product development or merchandising. And of course, you will be designing products, selecting materials, all that good stuff. You'll also be very hands-on when it comes to developing and creating the tech packs. So technical flats, making sure the measurements are right, and any kind of other specifications for the garments. So who is this for? Being a corporate designer is for somebody who really likes to work on a team and network, and somebody who does not want to sew. Okay? The best thing about being a corporate designer is that you're a part of a team and you are learning from a brand that is already established, that has some level of success. So you're getting to see the industry, see how it works, right? See what it's like to, deal with senior designers or management, being able to have a mentor in a way. It's like having multiple mentors at the same time. You're coming in, you're learning a lot, you're meeting people. That is the best thing about being a designer on a corporate level. Also, if you are hired as a fashion designer in a fashion house, you will not be a part of the manufacturing or production of the garment in any way. There's a chance that you'll help with communicating with pattern makers or sample makers, things like that. Or depending on who you work for, you may never interact with that part of the company or those contractors. So if you really like the design aspect and not necessarily the making part, the sewing and the drafting and all that stuff, then this might be the route that you want to go towards. Now, I will say this. If you want to be a fashion designer in an established fashion firm, there are hot spots within the U.S., okay? I come from a small town. I'm in Tennessee. There's not many fashion jobs here. So you may have to relocate to one of the big fashion cities like New York or LA, Miami, London, Paris, any of those kind of areas, Milan. But there are some fashion companies that are based in odd places. I remember Express was in Missouri or something like that. I'm not sure, don't quote me on it, but there are a few places that are not the huge metropolitan areas, but a lot of the jobs are in those big cities. So that's something that you need to consider if you are trying to go down that route. Next up is freelance. So being a freelance designer is very similar to being a corporate designer. The difference is you usually work pretty much by yourself, but you also don't work for one company. You basically offer your services to different brands, different companies, and usually for smaller projects. The thing about being freelance is you are no longer an employee. You're technically a small business owner. You're self-employed. So you will have to, of course, pay your own taxes, find your own health insurance, things like that. So how do freelance designers get work? So there's tons of websites like Fiverr or Upwork that will help you to find clients. There's also some fashion websites as well that can connect you with people who are looking for fashion designers. Now, a lot of times you can do this job remotely. Since you're doing sketches and mood boards and, sourcing fabrics and things like that and doing tech flats, all those things can be scanned, emailed, so you do not have to be in the same city. Now, there may be some clients that prefer to have a freelance designer who is local. It just kind of depends. Everything is kind of up in the air with freelance. So who is this for? Freelance is for designers who want more autonomy, who want more flexibility, who want to be able to make their own rates, make their own hours, work as much or as little as they want. I will say this, as a freelancer, it's up to you to find work, right? It's completely up to you. So if you want to eat this month, if you want to pay your rent this month, you have to make sure that you are going and finding the clients and you're booking work and you're, booking enough and you're busy enough to be able to support yourself. But something that is very nice about being a freelance designer is that it's very flexible, right? A lot of times, if you are hired as a fashion designer on a corporate level, you may be, depending on how large the company is, you could be something as broad as a women's wear designer, or you could be designing something very specific like men's outerwear. So as a freelance designer, though, you can work with all different kinds of companies. So if you are really interested in a lot of different things, or you haven't found a category that you just really love yet, you have the chance to kind of get the best of all the worlds, right? You might get one client who wants you to design children's sleepwear. And then you might have somebody that wants you to design who knows what, right? Menswear, maternity, there's all different kinds of categories. And that's the nice thing about being freelance. You get to kind of dabble in things. And I think that can be fun if you get bored easily. So as a freelance designer, every client is different. So you may have a client that requests services that other clients don't ask for. One client might just ask you for sketches. Some might ask you for fully rendered illustrations or technical flats. They want you to do some sourcing for materials. They may ask you to do pattern work. They might ask you to do like trend research, things like that. Every client is going to be different, and you can decide whether you want to do any additional services. Essentially, you can decide what services you offer. And sometimes they might ask you to add something or take away something, and that is completely up to you. Each contract or each project can be different and will be different. All right, so far we have talked about corporate design and freelance design. Now we're flipping to the other side, and we're going to talk about what it's like if you decide you want to be a fashion designer and start your very own clothing line. There's two different ways to go. Well, there's a few different ways to go through it, but we're going to talk about two different ways. And I'm calling them, the first category is going to be fashion design / production coordinator. The second category is going to be called fashion designer and maker. So the first thing I want to say before I dive into either one of these is that starting your own business is a wonderful thing. It is a learning experience. It's a beautiful thing. It's challenging. But one thing that I have to say, and it might be a little bit controversial, but as soon as you decide that you want to have a clothing line, you need to understand that you have to be a business owner first and a designer second. I remember when I was in fashion school, or just getting out of fashion school, and while I was in fashion school, I did a report on Oscar de la Renta, and I remember what he said when he first started, sewing and designing clothes and making clothes for people. He said, I know all of these designers, so many designers that are famous. They create for celebrities, but they haven't sold a single dress. He started his clothing line, or started in the fashion business, because he was trying to put food on his table. And that stuck with me. So a lot of my designer friends would be like, oh no, you need to do this. You need to have this fashion shoot that's like all about the concept and all about this. And I would be like, no, I need to have a photo shoot so that the person on the other side of this computer screen can see the front of this garment, the back of this garment, and all the details, so they can pay me for it. That was the most important thing for me. I don't need fog machines and avant-garde hair and makeup. I need to be able to sell this product. It doesn't matter how good of a designer you are if you cannot provide for yourself, right? If your business doesn't work, it doesn't matter about the fashion. Unless you're just doing it as a hobby, and that's a completely different thing. That's a completely different channel. But here, we want to make money, okay? So that being said, let's talk about the coordinator role, okay? So as a fashion designer who is a production coordinator, essentially you will do all the tasks of a designer. So of course, picking out colors and concepts and silhouettes and details and the actual designs, right? You will figure out all of that stuff, what materials you want. And then once you figure out your designs for this collection or line, you take all of that design work and you hand it over to your production team, right? So you're going to need pattern makers and pattern graders and sample makers, seamstress or factory finishers, right? You're going to have a entire production team. That's what I mean as a production coordinator, right? So you design everything and then you coordinate the manufacturing of it, right? So that can be done in-house. You could build your own team, or you could contract that out to different other businesses, right? I've said like 18,000 times. I wrote a script and then I left it at home, so it is what it is. But so we're just gonna stop here for a second. So as a fashion designer and production coordinator, you could, if you wanted to, do all of your pre-production. So if you went to school and you learned pattern making and you want to make your own patterns, or you want to drape it and make your pattern from there, that's completely up to you. You can do your pattern, your samples, your prototypes, all that good stuff. You can do all of that in your sample size and then hand that over to a manufacturer, a cut, make, trim company, and have them do the rest, right? Of course, you would still need a pattern maker who could grade your patterns and make markers and all that stuff. But so you can do some sewing, some pattern making. That is completely up to you. Or you can fully hand that process over to other people. Okay. Who is this for? This is for somebody who, of course, wants autonomy, wants to do the work of running a business, but also you want a little bit of your hands in the work, right? You want to make that first garment, right? You want to see the fit. You want to be hands-on with the development of the design, development of the garment. You just don't want to be the one sitting behind a sewing machine making every single dress. Okay, so it's a good kind of in between. You do need a lot of good communication skills because you are going to be a coordinator, right? So different manufacturers and fashion companies and factories, they have a production coordinator who is someone who puts all the pieces together to make sure that your manufacturing process is successful, is efficient. There are companies, you can go to different companies for different services, but there are also companies that offer full package programs that can do everything from some of them even do design work. But they do everything from pattern making to sample making to, cut, make, trim, manufacturing, finishing, packaging, like everything. So you just got to go out there. You got to be able to do the research. You've got to vet people. So that is a fashion designer / production coordinator. This last category is the fashion designer maker. This is the designer that you probably see the most, especially on social media. All these customs designers, people that make prom dresses, formal dresses, all kinds of costumes and things like that. Those are who I call designer makers. And that was me for many years. You know what? I'm going to put my commentary on the end, and first we're just going to talk about what it is. So, fashion designer maker is exactly what it sounds like. You have a clothing line, and every part of the product development, pre-production, and manufacturing is all done in-house by you. Okay? So you're doing all the things that we've talked about. You're doing all the design work, pattern work, grading, sourcing, sewing, finishing, fittings, all that stuff. You are doing it, and you are selling your skills directly to a consumer. So as a fashion designer maker, you're essentially doing everything yourself. I know a lot of designer makers, and I don't think I know any that actually have assistants. I might know one or two, but most of them are doing everything themselves. Being a fashion designer maker was my life for many years. And honestly, it is part of the reason why I don't have a clothing line today. So first, let's go back a little bit. Who is this for? This is for the fashion designer that wants to be hands-on. They want to make everything. They want to do custom pieces. They want to have that creative freedom to do whatever they want. In a sense, right? You still have to connect with your customer, your clients. You have to, do what makes them happy if you're doing customs. But it's for somebody that wants to be really hands-on and loves the entire process of design concept all the way through to the finished garment. So this is for someone, a designer who is proficient in all the areas. Okay. Lots of people call themselves designers. Okay. And I think almost anybody can be a designer. However, to be a good designer, to be a good craftsman, and have good workmanship, you have to know how to physically do things. Being a fashion designer maker, you have to be very good at pattern making or draping, but also if you're not great at it, you got to keep your silhouettes and your products very simple so that at least you can master the basic things. You may not be a world-class pattern maker that can do all these complicated and highly tailored garments, right? But you can get by with not great pattern making skills. So you got to be a good pattern maker. You got to know how to fit people on the front side with your pattern making and on the back side with fitting and alterations, things like that. You have to be good at sewing. You have to make sure you're doing things in a very thorough way, in a way that is quality, all those things. So you got to be good at pattern making, sewing, finishing, and you got to be good with selling yourself. You got to be good at sourcing, because if you charge something for a garment and then your sourcing is not right and you're paying too much money for your materials, that's going to cause, cash flow issues. It's not good. So now we're going to go a little bit into my opinion on the 4 categories. So as you know, well, you probably don't know yet because I haven't talked a lot about my experience with my clothing line yet, but I started my clothing line as a designer maker. When I ended my clothing line, essentially I was heading towards being a designer coordinator. So I have been a coordinator at many times, but I always sewed myself. So I think at the largest, I had a team of about 9 that year. So I still did my own patterns, but I did have several seamstresses that helped me get things done. I had, I called them production assistants, but they were really finishers. So I started my clothing line in 2010 and I was doing everything myself. By 2012, I hired my very first seamstress, and y'all, the joy, the pleasure, the relief of being able to take your baby, right? Your patterns, your fabric, your instructions, and just hand it to somebody else to complete. It is magical, okay? And I have been sewing since I was 9 years old. I come from a family of tailors, so we've been sewing forever. But when you're running a business, there is just something that wonderful happens when you're able to pass some of that responsibility off to somebody else. So yes, there is, when it comes to communication, you have to make sure that communication is good. And when I first started with my seamstresses, there were no tech packs, right? Like sometimes I would give them a garment that was already done, and I would sit down with them and with the pattern and be like, okay, this is this, this is that, this strap needs to go right here. It needs to be, da da da. If there's anything that I think could be confusing or unclear in my patterns, I would, kind of walk them through that. But yeah, I wasn't giving tech packs. I wasn't giving written instructions in the beginning. Eventually I did, because I was like, oh yeah, they need instructions. Just like a sewing pattern. But y'all, if I had to do it all over again, fresh out of college, I would go and be a corporate designer? I think I would be corporate. Actually, if I really think about it, I would probably start off as a corporate designer. See what that's like. Now, I could fall in love with being a corporate designer and working a 9 to 5 and rubbing shoulders and having that kind of relationship with, the industry, and then go home and live my life, I could see that happening, but that was never my path. So who knows what could have happened if I went down that path. But I could see myself starting in a corporate designer and then saying, you know what, I want to step away and run my own business. And I would probably start off as a freelancer, and then I might become a production coordinator and start my own line. But I don't think I would ever be a fashion designer maker again. And this is why. So when you know what? I don't know if I should say this or not. So I'm going to make this a different video. And I do think that a lot of people that want to start a clothing line, they do start off as a fashion designer maker, and eventually they transition into a coordinator. If you want to scale, that's the way to go. If you want to work less and just do more custom orders and live like that, then you could be happy as a designer maker. Just for my life though, I love to design the thing for the first time and sew it up and see it on my models and do all of that. But I don't want to sit. One thing that did not make me happy was sitting behind a sewing machine and sewing day in and day out. It took the joy away from me. So I specialized in resort wear. So I made a lot of swimsuits. And I started making high-waisted swimsuits when you could not find high-waisted swimsuits in Target. Like, you could not find them. You had to go on Etsy somewhere. But so one of my most popular items was just a black high-waisted bikini bottoms. So I'm sitting here designing all these cool, like, printed, unique swimsuits that I loved, and then people were ordering like the most basic thing in the world, and I had to sit there behind a sewing machine and just sew black bottom after black bottom after black bottom. And then on top of that, doing all the business owner things. So running the websites, ordering all the fabrics, training all the seamstresses, packing the orders, shipping things, labeling things, all of that stuff. It's a lot. So if I ever started my clothing line again, it would be as a designer production coordinator. And what happened with my clothing line, you know what? That's another story for another day. So just a little recap. We talked about being a fashion designer in 4 different ways. You can be corporate, freelance, a production coordinator, or a maker. Everybody is different. Every designer wants different things, enjoys different things, and it is okay to pivot in your career. You could be a designer who is a corporate designer and you stay in that lane for your entire career. Or you might be a designer that literally goes through each one of those phases. I could absolutely see that. So drop down in the comments what your thoughts are. What kind of designer do you think you would want to be? What appeals to you the most? I used to think that I wanted to just be a maker and just live in Hawaii and make my bikinis on my like covered patio and stuff. And then when it actually came down to making a living off of selling swimwear, I was like, nah. So tell me what you think. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments below. Also, this video was only about being a fashion designer. So if you're interested in all the other careers that are in the fashion industry that are not necessarily design, Zoe Hong has a very good video about that, and I've linked that in the description as well. Like, comment, subscribe, share, all that good stuff, of course. So thank you for watching, and I don't know, I'm just going to end this video. So don't forget to work your weird. See you next time.